As the light dimmed in an instant, Chen Sixuan scrambled on her knees into the cockpit. Using Lin Xian's phone flashlight, she quickly checked the train's travel mileage. Then, she returned to the corner, pulled out her notebook, and, trembling, carefully recorded. Day 1. Departed from Zhang City. Travel time, 50 minutes. Distance, 54 kilometers. Daylight hours, 16:00 to 18:45. Chen Sixuan's eyes kept trembling, her entire being on the verge of collapse. She seemed possessed, forcing herself not to think about what was happening outside. She tried not to think about Lin Xian, not about that family of 3, not about the darkness outside, and especially not about her impending death. Suddenly, the cockpit door automatically opened, and the corridor lights turned on. Startled, Chen Sixuan fell back onto the floor. The door opened, and Lin Xian, covered in blood and wielding a short blade, leapt inside. Chen Sixuan was overjoyed. She immediately got up to close and lock the door tightly. Then, to prevent the light in the hallway from leaking into the darkness outside, she shut the small door leading into the cockpit as well. Lin, are you okay? Chen Sixuan knelt in the carriage, staring in shock at Lin Xian, who was now covered in wounds. I'm not dead. Lin Xian grabbed a bottle of water from behind, twisted it open, and downed half of it in big gulps before finally exhaling deeply. Seeing him in such a bloodied state, Chen Sixuan quickly pulled out a towel to wipe him down. But Lin Xian grabbed her wrist. What's wrong? Chen Sixuan looked up in surprise, meeting Lin Xian's piercing gaze. His eyes were cold as ice, and he questioned her in a sharp tone. Why didn't you open the door earlier? In truth, Lin Xian had been climbing up for a while. Although injured, he knew that Defei and his group would definitely leave before nightfall. So, he had hidden on the slope for a bit, looking for his short blade in the process. Chen Sixuan raised her eyes to look at him. Seeing his serious expression, she bit her lip, lowered her gaze, and, after a moment of silence, replied softly, "If I had opened the door, wouldn't you have thrown me out as well?" "Yes." Lin Xian's voice was cold as ice. Chen Sixuan's expression darkened. Hearing Lin Xian's blunt response, she seemed deflated, leaning weakly against the wall. Her eyes filled with pain as she shut them tightly, and silent tears streamed down her face. Lin Xian let out a small sigh. Watching Chen Sixuan cry, he finally spoke. "You hesitated out of kindness, I understand that. As humans, when we ignore the suffering of others, anyone with a shred of conscience is bound to feel pain." Hearing his words, Chen Sixuan's emotions completely crumbled. She threw herself into Lin Xian's arms, her slender shoulders shaking. Her sobs turned into uncontrollable wails, full of heartbreak and regret. She cried without any restraint, like a child admitting to a terrible mistake. "I really didn't know what to do." Lin Xian gently held her trembling body and said in a low voice, "There's a saying in Buddhism, before saving others, save yourself. Before saving yourself, save your heart. If the heavens won't help, help yourself. If you can't even protect yourself, there's no way you can protect anyone else. If you had opened the door, not only would those 3 people have died, but you would have died too, dragging me down with you." "I know," Chen Sixuan wept, her tear-streaked face full of self-blame and guilt. "But I heard the baby crying. That baby, it sounded like it was only a few months old." A maternal instinct naturally surged within her. At that moment, Chen Sixuan felt like she had turned into a monster, a heartless demon. Lin Xian remained expressionless as he watched Chen Sixuan's near breakdown. With a faint sigh, he said, "If I told you it was all fake, what would you think?" Chen Sixuan, still buried in his arms and sobbing, froze upon hearing his words. Slowly, she looked up with teary, clouded eyes and asked, "What did you say?" Lin Xian's gaze sharpened slightly as he explained. We're right near Yushin Station. Even without the train, the safest option would have been to hide in the station. But as soon as that group left, that family of 3 came knocking on the door. It was too deliberate. And, have you ever seen a mother cruel enough to pinch her baby to make it cry on purpose? Chen Sixuan's pupils trembled violently upon hearing this. Tears glistened in her eyes, and her face was filled with disbelief. You're saying they were lying? Lin Xian gave a helpless smile. Ms. Chen, you've heard the story of the boy who cried wolf, haven't you? If I'm not mistaken, that family of 3 was deliberately sent by the group to trick us into opening the door. In the apocalypse, everyone feared for their lives. Exploiting others' sympathy had indeed proven to be an effective strategy. And as it happened, Lin Xian had just experienced a similar situation the day before. Hearing Lin Xian's explanation, Chen Sixuan covered her mouth in shock. She found it hard to believe that people could be so despicable. Then she thought of Director Liang, and a chill ran through her body. She felt she had been too naive. At this moment, she truly understood the depth of human malice. Chen Sixuan felt utterly drained, her eyes blank and unfocused. Lin Xian glanced at her. He had to admit, her reaction brought him a sense of relief. He deeply understood how treacherous people could be in the apocalypse. If Chen Sixuan had been a bleeding heart, even going so far as to plead with him to open the door, he wouldn't have hesitated to abandon her entirely. He couldn't afford to trust such a teammate to guard the train. But this incident gave him a subtle shift in perspective on Chen Sixuan. In a short span of time, this woman, once a campus queen adored by all, had shown remarkable courage. It proved that she wasn't just highly intelligent but also possessed extraordinary resilience. To be honest, Lin Xian couldn't help but feel a faint sense of admiration for her. Am I just too stupid? Chen Sixuan broke the silence after a long pause. Lin Xian adjusted his posture and replied with a faint smile, very stupid, and very naive. Hearing his evaluation, Chen Sixuan's expression turned self-deprecating, and she let out a silent laugh. Lin Xian, having just survived a brutal battle, was in considerable pain. He glanced toward the corner where their supplies were stored and asked, "Aren't you hungry? Why haven't you eaten anything?" Chen Sixuan's eyes widened at his words, and she replied seriously, You didn't give me permission to eat." Lin Xian's gaze turned peculiar as he looked at her. His expression was a mix of amusement and disbelief. "Ms. Chen, you're adorable. What do you mean by that?" Chen Sixuan asked, her face puzzled. "I mean, Ms. Chen, right now, I feel like sleeping with you." Huh? Chen Sixuan was completely caught off guard by Lin Xian's blunt statement. Before she could react, Lin Xian pulled her into his arms. She panicked instantly, squirming like a frightened rabbit, and stammered, "Wait, Lin, aren't you injured?" Does it have to be now?" "Hold on, you're covered in blood." "Lin Xian, I've never done this before." Wait. I have that in my bag." The night was as dark as ink, and snowflakes swirled gently outside. However, not far away, on a sofa, a young girl lay sleeping. Her eyes remained closed, but her delicate brows gradually furrowed. Beep, beep. Inside carriage number 1, Lin Xian lay on a comfortable memory foam mattress, savoring the soft warmth of the person in his arms. After 2 consecutive sleepless nights, he finally managed to get some decent rest. He glanced at the time. 1400 hours. Fortunately, the night had been peaceful and uneventful. It was still dark outside. Lin Xian had preset his watch to observe the exact time daylight would return. The night was far too long, and they had slept far too much. The woman lying on him, Chen Sixuan, had already woken up. She remained silent, but when Lin Xian stirred, She blushed furiously and quickly got dressed, pulling up her pants. In a small voice, she said to him, "They seem to have blocked the tracks with rocks." Lin Xian pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and placed a light kiss on her fragrant lips. He replied, "I know. I dealt with it before I got on the train." Chen Sixuan, feeling shy, slipped out of his embrace. She picked up the travel logbook and started speaking to herself. Counting the distance from Yushin Station, we covered 54 kilometers yesterday. Based on the survivors' shared information, daylight should return by 1700 hours today. After their intimate night, she couldn't help but avoid looking directly at Lin Xian as she spoke. "We'll see," Lin Xian said, glancing at his watch. "This distance may not be enough to notice a significant change." Since it was still pitch dark outside, the two kept their voices low as they took out some food and water for a quick meal. Lin Xian leaned against the corridor, pressing a hand to the floor as he probed the outside situation. He also took a moment to check his injuries, and as expected, his recovery was astonishingly fast. As an ability user, his body was qualitatively different from an ordinary person's. Furthermore, after yesterday's life-or-death battle with Lu Wei, Lin Xian's wind cannon skill had improved significantly. Wind cannon LV.1, 25/100. Ice shield LV.1, 6/100. Yesterday's fight had pushed Lin Xian to his absolute limits. For the first time, he realized just how ruthless and decisive he could be, maintaining a chilling calm in critical moments. He even found himself impressed with his own composure. Time ticked by. Lin Xian stared at his watch as the minutes passed. 15:00 still dark. 16:00 still no daylight. The later the sun rise, the faster they needed to flee. What worried Lin Xian most was the possibility of no change in daylight time. That would truly be despairing. The temperature had already dropped to around 0 degrees Celsius. Lin Xian and Chen Sixuan both put on long-sleeve clothes to keep warm. Thankfully, he had looted a bunch of new quilts and memory foam mattresses from the furniture store. Otherwise, they'd be stuck sleeping on cold, hard beds in this freezing weather. Finally, at 16:48, a streak of light flashed across the sky. The darkness abruptly retreated, and the setting sun hung low on the horizon. "It's daytime," Chen Sixuan exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with joy. Daylight had come 12 minutes earlier than the predicted time of 1700 hours, a small but hopeful sign that they were escaping the polar night. Lin Xian opened the door to the corridor, and he and Chen Sixuan stepped into the cockpit together. They stared at the sunlight outside, their eyes filled with both surprise and worry. The joy came from the fact that daylight had arrived earlier than expected, confirming that they were indeed making progress in escaping the endless night. The worry came from the realization that a mere 12-minute improvement was like a drop in the bucket. Chen Sixuan quickly regained her composure. Picking up the travel logbook, she began calculating. If daylight arrived 12 minutes earlier, and we only covered 54 kilometers yesterday, then to reach 1700 hours daylight tomorrow, we'd need to travel at least 270 kilometers. More or less, Lin Xian nodded. That matches the broadcast information we heard. But don't get too optimistic. We're not traveling in a straight line, and covering 270 kilometers would take at least 3 hours at our current speed unless we accelerate. Chen Sixuan's expression dimmed at his words. "Yeah, but we can't go too fast. There's no guarantee someone won't try to block the tracks with cars or rocks again." In just 2 days, they had faced constant dangers, each time brushing past death. The thought weighed heavily on Chen Sixuan, filling her with anxiety. Vroom! The infinite train's 10-cylinder heavy gas turbine engine roared to life. Lin Xian took the driver's seat and glanced back at Chen Sixuan. "Miss Chen, hold on tight." Hearing Lin Xian still call her Miss Chen, Chan Sixuan felt a surge of awkwardness and unease. After all, the two of them had already. Did he have some sort of fetish? Was he into that taboo teacher-student dynamic? Unaware of Chan Sixuan's overthinking, Lin Xian drove the train into reverse. Seeing the train moving backward, Chan Sixuan's expression turned to shock. "We're reversing." "Yes," Lin Xian replied solemnly. "We're heading back to Yushin Station to check things out." With Lu Wei dead, his convoy was bound to fall into chaos without its leader, especially as night approached. Without Lu Wei, an ability user, any remaining lackeys with guns posed little threat to Lin Xian and Chan Sixuan as long as they stayed on the train. He had already taken down their leader. It would feel like a waste not to reap some rewards. Moreover, Lin Xian now felt a faint sense of hope. If they could just keep pushing forward, they might truly escape the polar night. For someone who had endured months of this hellish survival, this was undoubtedly an encouraging sign. Clang, clang. The sound of the train echoed steadily as it rolled along the tracks. Before long, the heavy locomotive slowly backed into Yushin Station, and the scene that greeted Lin Xian and Chan Sixuan made their expressions change drastically. The platform was in complete ruins. The Oasis convoy had been entirely wiped out. The off-road vehicles and jeeps parked there were smeared with grotesque bloodstains, while the station's ground was practically soaked in crimson. Several members of the convoy had already turned into zombies, their bodies completely blackened. They stood there groaning, lifeless yet terrifying. Among them, Chan Sixuan recognized one of the zombified men. It was the bespectacled, seemingly cultured middle-aged man who had pretended to be the father of the fake family of 3 the previous day. Who could have imagined that in just one night, everyone would perish? "Ah! Lin Xian, look!" Chan Sixuan gasped, pointing toward the station's waiting hall. The relatively small waiting hall had been almost completely overrun. But what shocked the two the most was the sight of several large, insect-like legs scattered near the waiting hall's entrance. Chan Sixuan's face turned pale. "Oh my God, what kind of monster is this?" Lin Xian frowned, his thoughts flashing back to the insect-like creature he had glimpsed near Warehouse 14. A chill ran through him. He had driven over 50 kilometers yesterday. Could it have caught up to them? Lin Xian still had no clues about that strange creature or the pale giant. It was as if they appeared out of nowhere in the dark of night, only to vanish completely with the sunrise. If it weren't for the massive insect legs right before them, who would believe that such horrifying monsters could suddenly emerge in this world? Leaning against the train window, Lin Xian observed the scene carefully for a while before finally speaking. "Don't be scared. It's daytime now, so these things shouldn't come out." Still, internally, he was cursing. He had just started to consider moving at night, and now reality slapped him right in the face. If these creatures were following him, how was he supposed to travel freely? "Are we still going down there?" Chan Sixuan asked hesitantly. "Yes." Lin Xian gritted his teeth. Since they were already here, and the Oasis convoy had fallen, this was a perfect opportunity to scavenge their remaining supplies. "All right, I'll go too." Chan Sixuan clenched her fists, but Lin Xian stopped her with a raised hand. "Hold on. Let me go first. I'll take care of those zombies, and then you can come down." "Okay." Chan Sixuan nodded obediently. Gripping his short blade, Lin Xian activated the train's cockpit door and leapt down. The moment he landed, he unleashed several wind cannon blasts, cleanly blowing the heads off the zombies on the platform. Although the skill consumed some energy, Lin Xian preferred not to risk alarming anything else. The wind cannon was quiet, making it ideal for surprise attacks. Thud, thud, thud. One by one, the zombies collapsed. Only then did Lin Xian notice the overwhelming stench of blood in the air. He wrinkled his brows in disgust. The platform was riddled with bullet holes and littered with severed limbs. Clearly, A brutal battle had taken place here last night. Having witnessed the monstrosity of these creatures firsthand, Lin Xian was certain that regular firearms would have done little to harm them. This scene only confirmed how futile the convoy's resistance must have been. Ugh! The overwhelmingly gruesome scene finally broke Chen Sixuan's psychological defenses. As she stepped off the train, the stench of blood hit her like a wall, and she immediately began dry heaving. Lin Xian was about to comfort her, but she raised a hand and said, "No, no need. I'll be fine." Her face was deathly pale, but Lin Xian could tell she was making a great effort to adjust to the horrific sight before her. Understanding this, he said nothing more. "Be careful. There might still be survivors, or more zombies." Chen Sixuan nodded, and the two began scavenging the parked off-road vehicles on the platform. Almost immediately, they discovered a large stash of water and food originally stocked by the Oasis convoy. "There's so much food." Deliberately avoiding looking at the corpses on the ground, Chen Sixuan opened the car doors and started gathering supplies. Lin Xian swept his gaze around. Most of the supplies here were relatively intact, which made him frown. He surmised that the Oasis convoy's downfall wasn't caused by human attackers, otherwise the supplies would have been looted already. His eyes fell on the massive insect legs scattered nearby, and his heart sank. Vroom! Lin Xian opened the hydraulic lift gate of carriage number 3 and called to Chen Sixuan. "Time is tight. Just toss everything inside for now, we'll sort it out on the way." "Got it?" And so, the two began working together, scavenging every bit of usable supplies from the devastated convoy. What Lin Xian didn't expect, however, was that the Chen Sixuan who had been gagging every few steps and frowning constantly was now completely consumed by the excitement of finding resources. Energized, she moved back and forth between the cars and the train, carrying supplies as if she'd completely adapted to the situation. At one moment, she excitedly told Lin Xian that she had found a large box of instant noodles. In another, she let out a cheer after discovering several crates of canned food. Then, from one of the cars, she somehow managed to unearth a basket full of bottles and containers of skincare and shampoo products and immediately started jumping with joy. Watching her confidently running around the corpses without hesitation, Lin Xian couldn't help but marvel at her adaptability, which far exceeded his expectations. "Look, Lin Xian. What's this?" At that moment, Chen Sixuan found a black leather case inside a large Raptor truck. Opening it, she discovered a purple plastic rod, a small perforated cup, some indescribably lacy lingerie, and even a USB drive carefully preserved in a small box labeled Precious Teacher Materials. "Teacher materials?" Chen Sixuan mumbled to herself, remembering that she was a teacher. Curiosity piqued. She thought it might be something important. She pulled out the purple plastic rod with a puzzled look, but as soon as she saw the strange clothing inside, realization dawned on her. "Ah!" She let out a small cry and immediately threw everything away, sneaking a glance at Lin Xian. Her face turned bright red in embarrassment. Lin Xian found it amusing. While he understood that such personal needs were normal, bringing so much gear on a doomsday escape was a bold choice. Clearly, someone in the Oasis convoy had been resourceful. The Oasis convoy, having left John City just 2 days ago, had already been completely wiped out, leaving Lin Xian to reap the benefits. For over half an hour, the two tirelessly loaded the train with supplies. Lin Xian estimated that even if they ate 3 full meals a day, the amount of food they had collected would last them at least 2 months. By any measure, it was an enormous haul. He couldn't help but marvel at Lu Wei's audacity. He'd seen bandits block roads, and even vehicles, but blocking a train? That was a first. Lu Wei's overconfidence as an ability user ultimately led to his death, not undeserved, in Lin Xian's opinion. And yet, it had left him with a windfall. However, after searching for a while, Lin Xian only found 3 rifles and 1 handgun at the scene. All were in poor condition, and there wasn't a single bullet left. To fight so viciously, what kind of monster was it? Lin Xian frowned deeply. He took the guns off the corpses, but without bullets, they were practically useless. Maybe I should just devour them. Still, Lin Xian felt it would be wasteful to immediately consume guns that had been so hard to find, even if they were in bad shape. Forget it. I'll take them for now. Almost done. Let's get moving, Lin Xian said, raising the hydraulic liftgate to secure the supplies. The most important task now was to get back on the road. They had gathered everything useful they could. Clang. Clang. The infinite train was ready to depart once more. At that moment, Lin Xian's mechanical heart encompassed the entire train, and he suddenly detected movement inside. His brow furrowed immediately. Turning to Chen Sixuan, he gestured for silence. Noticing the seriousness in his expression, Chen Sixuan's face also changed, her gaze shifting toward the train. Is there someone on board? Lin Xian's face darkened as he remembered the unconscious girl still on board, a complete unknown to him. It's that girl. Chen Sixuan finally realized. Lin Xian stood frozen for a moment, half exasperated, half amused. The girl who had been unconscious for 3 days had apparently been playing a sneaky game with him. Clang. The infinite train's cockpit door opened as Lin Xian and Chen Sixuan entered one after the other, shutting it firmly behind them. Lin Xian promptly started the train and then turned to Chen Sixuan. Miss Chen, be careful. That girl likely has some sort of ability. Let me handle her. Not wanting to waste time while on the move, and wary of the girl's potential powers, Lin Xian decided to ensure Chen Sixuan's safety by leaving her behind. Okay, be careful, Chen Sixuan replied, still full of curiosity. She had been puzzled by the girl's condition. How could someone sleep for 3 days without waking? With time of the essence, Lin Xian had to not only drive the train but also deal with the girl. Chen Sixuan, therefore, took on the responsibility of monitoring the road ahead. As Lin Xian entered carriage number 1, he found a sofa empty. On the floor lay a few lengths of rope, clearly untied. Slowing his steps, Lin Xian began closing the doors between carriages as he moved, intending to trap her. When he reached carriage number 2, a wooden stick suddenly swung toward him from the front, accompanied by a sharp shout. He yawned. The girl had clearly used all her strength, determined to succeed in her ambush. However, Lin Xian's speed had already surpassed that of an ordinary human, and he had been on guard. The moment the stick appeared, his hand shot out and caught it firmly in midair. Realizing her sneak attack had failed, the girl's expression changed drastically. She screamed, "Aunt," and immediately dropped the stick, turning to run toward the next carriage, attempting to shut the door behind her. What she didn't know was that the entire train was under Lin Xian's control. If he wanted the door open, it would open. Clack! The door she had just closed swung open again. Lin Xian, his face cold, stepped forward, gripping his short blade tightly. I was wondering why you didn't wake up after so long. No hunger. No bathroom breaks. Turns out you could untie yourself this whole time, Lin Xian said mockingly. Ah! The girl, clutching half a piece of bread, was so frightened by Lin Xian's imposing presence that she ran while shouting, "Don't come any closer! Don't come any closer!" She retreated as far as carriage number 3 without realizing it, her path now blocked. In a moment of desperation, her eyes darted around before she grabbed the cardboard box and hurled it at Lin Xian. Taking advantage of the moment he dodged, she tried to slip past him and run in the opposite direction. Lin Xian remained cautious. He suspected the girl possessed a powerful ability, so he secretly prepared his wind cannon and was ready to deploy his ice shield for defense at any moment. To his surprise, the girl merely threw a cardboard box at him. Bewildered, Lin Xian hesitated. Just as the girl attempted to dart past him, Lin Xian raised a hand, caught her wrist, and yanked her back. A quick trip of his foot sent her tumbling to the ground, where she cried out in pain. "Ow! I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Big brother, please don't kill me." Lin Xian frowned. He had subdued her far too easily, encountering none of the resistance he'd expected. Yet he distinctly remembered this girl hurling Grandpa Li through the air during the night with apparent ease. His suspicions deepened as he noticed a faint trace of cunning flash in her tear-filled eyes. Instantly, his guard shot up. "She's acting. Playing along," Lin Xian coldly rebuked. "You stole my food, then tried to ambush me. Is this how you repay the person who saved your life?" Sensing that Lin Xian didn't intend to kill her, the girl doubled down on her performance, her face flushed as she pleaded even more dramatically. I'm sorry. Please don't kill me." Pinned beneath him, the girl flailed wildly. Her short shorts revealed two smooth, bare legs kicking with all their might, struggling to escape. Lin Xian firmly pinned the girl to the ground, preventing her from escaping easily. "Since you're awake, why are you pretending to sleep? What exactly is your purpose?" The girl struggled fiercely, stubbornly replying, I. Lin Xian's expression turned cold as he brought the blade across her line of sight. "Do you think I'll go easy on you just because you're a woman?" Seeing the steel blade glinting with a chilling light, the girl's eyes widened in shock. She immediately pleaded, "I was wrong. Please don't kill me. Let go of me. I can barely breathe." At this moment, her face was flushed red as she was subdued by him. Lin Xian frowned. He couldn't help but think, wasn't this girl the one who blasted through my door earlier? How does she suddenly have no strength to resist now? Just as he was pondering, the girl suddenly burst into tears. Ugh, please don't kill me. I'll do anything, as long as you spare me." Before the words even fully left her lips, the girl suddenly turned her head and sank her teeth into Lin Xian's ankle. Hiss. A sharp, piercing pain shot through him. Lin Xian's expression darkened. This girl is as cunning as I suspected, ambushing me when I let my guard down." Enduring the pain, Lin Xian raised his blade and smacked her directly on the forehead. Bang! A crisp sound echoed as the girl let out a sharp cry of pain before fainting on the spot. Still pretending. Lin Xian was furious. At this point, he had no intention of showing any mercy. He went to the toolbox in the third carriage and pulled out a bundle of nylon cable ties. After tying up the girl's hands and feet securely, he finally felt a little more at ease. Leaning against the side of the carriage, he glanced at his ankle, where a bite mark stood out vividly. Am I going to turn into a zombie now? Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, the girl, with her head lowered, muttered angrily. "You're the zombie. Your whole family are zombies." Lin Xian's gaze turned cold. "What? Not pretending to faint anymore? Speak up. What's your name? What's your purpose? Or you can choose to say nothing, and I'll throw you off the train right now." He drew a short blade, his tone icy, leaving no doubt that he meant every word. Clank, clank. The train moved steadily forward. The walkie-talkie remained silent, and Teacher Chen hadn't sent any updates, which meant the tracks ahead were clear. "My name is Kiki," the girl finally said. Her tone changed completely from the innocent and soft, cutesy voice she had used earlier to a much colder and indifferent one. So it was all an act. How did you find me? What's your purpose? And why were you pretending to sleep this whole time? Don't make me keep asking questions. You should be well aware of your situation." Kiki, with her head still lowered, sighed suddenly. Tied up as she was, she struggled to sit up, glaring at Lin Xian. Despite her face being streaked with tears and her eyes still red, There wasn't a trace of grievance in her expression. Her ability to cry and switch emotions on a dime was honestly impressive. What else? That day, weren't you the one waving a flag on the rooftop? A flag? Lin Xian frowned. Are you telling me you were in that helicopter? Of course, Kiki replied blankly, giving him a sidelong glance. Go on. Didn't you see? The helicopter crashed. And then? I had nowhere else to go. And? You peeked at my underwear. What? Lin Xian frowned deeply. Kiki bit her lip and muttered quietly. Yes, I woke up the next day. But I didn't know who you were or where I was. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was you. Lin Xian's expression shifted. And so I naturally assumed you were a pervert. Lin Xian interjected. So, the reason you pretended to be unconscious was to steal food and ambush me? Not exactly, Kiki said, looking aggrieved. I just wanted to escape, but I never got the chance. Lin Xian's expression shifted unpredictably before he finally spat out. Fun. You think I'm some psycho holding you captive, right? Then go ahead. Leave. Lin Xian glanced at the setting sun outside and said bluntly. Since you are so smart, I'm sure you will figure out a way to survive out there. Judging by your background, why don't you just have your father come save you? His tone was icy, carrying a hint of probing intent. My dad's dead, Kiki replied flatly, her voice devoid of any sadness. The carriage fell silent for a moment. That has nothing to do with me, Lin Xian said, standing up decisively. Wait. I admit I initially wanted to run away, but now I realize I misunderstood you. Please, don't throw me off the train, okay? Kiki pleaded hurriedly. Lin Xian chuckled coldly. You didn't suddenly realize you misunderstood me. You just figured out you wouldn't survive out there. The girl was indeed clever, but Lin Xian remained calm and indifferent as he looked at her. Sorry, you're of no value to me. Hearing this, Kiki panicked and quickly blurted. Wait, take me to Jinhai. My dad was the chairman of Linglong Group and a secondary investor in the Dawn Project. He had access to the Dawn Project's saturated rescue program, and after his death, that privilege passed to me. If you take me to Jinhai, someone will come to get me. Then, I can provide you with any supplies you need or even arrange for you to become a third-class citizen under the Dawn Project, allowing you to move into the underground city. The orange glow of the setting sun filtered through the grid armor of the third carriage, retreating across their bodies as the train moved forward. Lin Xian frowned as he listened to her words. He had indeed heard of the Dawn Project. During the initial stages of the apocalypse, countless versions of this plan had circulated online. Some claimed it was an official underground city project meant to help people survive the end times, while others said it was part of a rogue starship program designed to preserve the flame of human civilization. Speculation ran wild, accompanied by countless conspiracy theories, leaving the truth murky. Not interested, Lin Xian said flatly, his response completely contrary to Kiki's expectations. His tone remained as calm as water, and he directly rejected her offer. You don't believe me. Even if I did, I'm still not interested, Lin Xian replied firmly, his eyes cold as they bore into her. Not only am I uninterested, I find this conversation boring. You might as well jump off yourself, so I don't have to do it for you. Whether Kiki's words were true or not, Lin Xian genuinely didn't care. Compared to the so-called third-class citizenship in some underground city, he had far more faith in his own ability. As long as he made good use of his powers, his chances of survival were high. At least higher than being buried underground, where he might lose all sense of autonomy. Kiki's eyes flickered with panic under Lin Xian's indifferent gaze, though she quickly concealed her emotions and sneered at him. Why aren't you interested in the Dawn Project? Are you planning to rely on this train instead? Let me be blunt, your plan is ridiculously naive. Have you even thought this through? The outside world is already collapsing. Without maintenance engineers, the planetary rail network won't hold. 1/5 of the 320,000-kilometer track system is over oceans. What will you do if the tracks break? What if the train is damaged? What if supplies run out? What about storms, tsunamis, or earthquakes? After the plane crash, I don't even know how I survived. I just kept heading toward your house. I knew I had an ability, but I didn't know how to use it. Then that day, when I woke up, I discovered. Lin Xian shot her a sharp glare, making Kiki shiver in fright. She whimpered tearfully. I heard you rescue that Chan lady and said something about wanting to sleep with her, then mentioned the Infinite Train project. It all sounded so sketchy. So, I thought you were one of those scumbags taking advantage of the apocalypse to deceive women, so. Lin Xian looked at her coldly. So you were afraid that asking for help would land you in a wolf's den. So, you pretended to be unconscious and then tried to ambush me. Kiki nodded, then quickly shook her head. With the cold blade before her, she averted her eyes nervously and stammered, I wasn't trying to ambush you. I was desperate. But think about it, I just survived a disaster, woke up, and saw you plotting something against me. Of course, I was scared. In this apocalyptic world, it's better to be safe than sorry. Both Lin Xian and Kiki had that mindset. After waking up, she initially wanted to talk with Lin Xian, but ended up misinterpreting his intentions. She mistook him for a complete pervert, and in a panic, decided to keep pretending to be unconscious, searching for an opportunity to escape. But when Lin Xian and Chan Sixuan stepped off the train, before she could finish half a piece of bread, Lin Xian, armed with his mechanical heart ability, caught her red-handed. Well then, Lin Xian suddenly said, if you don't even know how to use your ability, keeping you around is pointless, isn't it? His statement was chillingly logical. As he spoke, the short knife in his hand inched closer to Kiki's neck. Her face turned pale, and she shut her eyes tightly. Wait. Don't be rash, let's talk this through. Kiki peeked open one eye, catching a glimpse of Lin Xian's fierce expression. She immediately closed it again and blurted out. Don't kill me. If you keep me alive, my ability could be useful in a dangerous situation. Besides, my life is already in your hands, isn't it? Hearing this, Lin Xian's gaze sharpened. Seeing the honesty in her eyes, he relaxed slightly. Life and death were at stake. If Kiki really understood how to use such a powerful ability, would she allow herself to be threatened like this? This realization made Lin Xian exhale deeply. Fair point. Clang. The wheels of the infinite train began to roll again. Kiki saw Lin Xian put away the knife, and the tension in her chest finally eased. She looked at him and asked cautiously. So, are we good now? Good. Lin Xian smirked to himself. This girl was truly unpredictable. He gave her a meaningful look. I'll think about it. Okay. Kiki's expression shifted from panic to relief. Keep me around, I can really help you. But, before Kiki could celebrate, Lin Xian suddenly grabbed her by the collar and, with a strange smile, started dragging her toward the first carriage. Caught off guard, Kiki panicked. Hey, what are you doing? Guess. Lin Xian's tone was cryptic. Alarmed, Kiki stammered, Hey. I said we're good now. I was wrong. I didn't mean to harm you, don't bully me. I don't think so. Wait. I'm not even an adult yet. Doesn't matter. Wait. Actually, I'm a guy. Look, I don't even have, anything. I'm not your type. And you already have that other woman. Just leave me alone. I'm not picky. All right, I have an ability, remember. If I accidentally use it and hurt you, what then? If that happens, you should thank me for helping you unlock your power. In the first carriage, Lin Xian tied up Kiki's hands and feet with 2 extra ropes, securely binding her in a classic hog tie and tossing her onto the sofa. He declared loudly, "You reminded me if your ability activates during danger, I can just use you as a shield. And since you've already pulled the stunt of emptying yourself to attack me, I had no choice but to add extra layers to prevent any funny business. You're despicable. You bastard." Kiki struggled against the ropes. Lin Xian picked up a roll of smelly socks and held it up. "If you keep yapping, don't blame me for stuffing this into your mouth." Kiki was absolutely fuming, her face alternating between red and pale. While she was slightly relieved that Lin Xian didn't have any actual intent to bully her, the fact that he tied her up to use her as a human shield was utterly disgusting and vile. But now, she was under his roof and couldn't outmatch him. Seeing him holding those stinky socks, she decided to stay quiet. However, she glared at him with eyes burning with fury, secretly vowing to get back at him when the chance came. "If you keep glaring, you can spend a night sleeping with the zombies," Lin Xian said coldly, noticing her defiance. Hearing the word zombies, Kiki instinctively shrank back, cowering under his imposing threat. She remained silent for a long time before finally muttering, her voice barely audible, "Why are you so mean? What if I need to go to the bathroom?" Lin Xian suddenly chuckled. "Why don't you tell me how you managed these past 3 days without food or bathroom breaks? That night, you weren't here. I waited until that lady fell asleep, then got up to eat and use the bathroom. And last night..." Kiki shot him a glare, her eyes shifting evasively. "Last night you were so exhausted. I waited until you both fell asleep, then got up." Lin Xian frowned. "So, if I hadn't caught you, you would have kept playing dead indefinitely." "Not exactly," Kiki admitted hesitantly. "I was planning to confess today, but then I got hungry, and since you both were gone..." Lin Xian. At 6:45 p.m., the sun dipped below the horizon, and night blanketed the sky. The infinite train came to a slow halt on a railway bridge spanning a mountain ravine. After leaving Yushin Station, the train had been racing for nearly 2 hours, save for a brief stop. Now, the entire train radiated residual heat, only to have its temperature plummet under the intensifying snowfall. The temperature had dropped to -3 degrees, and frost had begun to form on the carriage windows as the snowstorm swept in. Chen Sixuan lowered all the blackout shades and closed the door to the driver's cabin. Outside the train, the dark valley stretched endlessly, with only faint mountain outlines visible against the night. Inside the first carriage, Chen Sixuan cast a peculiar glance at the hog-tied Kiki. "She's been pretending to sleep this whole time." "Exactly," Lin Xian replied, giving her a look. "We both let our guard down. Last night, she got a live broadcast of everything." "I did not." Kiki's face flushed red as she retorted, I kept my eyes shut the whole time. I didn't see anything." Chen Sixuan's face instantly turned crimson. If it had just been her and Lin Xian, no matter how embarrassing, she would have brushed it off as a bit of post-apocalyptic warmth. But with a third person there and being caught, she felt utterly mortified, even as her moral compass had been warped by the apocalypse. Biting her lip in frustration, she glared at Kiki and asked angrily, "Why did you pretend to sleep? If we hadn't taken care of you these past 2 days, you'd already be dead." Kiki shot Lin Xian a strange look. "I just misunderstood this bad guy, that's all." "Oh, really?" Lin Xian chuckled. Feeling reassured now, Kiki averted her gaze, muttering, "Didn't I already say we're good now?" She suddenly turned to Chen Sixuan, speaking in a soft, pleading tone, Miss Chen, thank you for taking care of me these past 2 days. Can you help untie me? It's so uncomfortable like this. Really? I don't see how it's bothering you. Chen Sixuan snorted. You slept quite soundly these past 2 days while tied up. Though gentle by nature, Chen Sixuan wasn't without her limits. Kiki's stunt had scared her, and she wasn't in the mood to indulge her. Kiki was momentarily speechless, then shot an annoyed look at Lin Xian. Hey, you're not seriously planning to keep me tied up like this, are you? What if a monster shows up? Lin Xian's expression remained indifferent. This is punishment for stealing food. If you want me to untie you, show me what you can do. If your ability isn't helpful, you're off the train. Kiki huffed in frustration, stealing a nervous glance at him before curling up on the sofa. Fine, I was wrong, okay. If I have any ability, I'll use it to help. Just don't kick me off the train. Good. Lin Xian's voice was cold. He left it at that and got up to head to the driver's cabin, leaving Chen Sixuan to keep an eye on her. Lin Xian took out the guns he had scavenged from the Oasis convoy, shaking his head as he examined them. One of the axes even had a bent barrel. Judging by how the group had run out of bullets and likely used their guns as firewood sticks, it was no surprise they had been completely wiped out. What kind of monster could annihilate them so thoroughly? Devour progress, 5%. With no bullets and a warp barrel, Lin Xian decided to feed the gun to his mechanical devour ability and see if there was any value to it. Devour successful. Mechanical core points +2. Mechanical devour skill proficiency +1. Devour successful. Mechanical core points +1. Mechanical devour skill proficiency +1. That's it. This was a gun. Staring at the notifications on his interface, Lin Xian felt his patience wearing thin. Axe aren't firewood. Damn it. Suddenly, his expression shifted as he sensed something. From the quiet floor of the carriage, a faint but distinct tremor came through the tracks. Clack, clack, clack. The sound was rhythmic, like countless iron chains sliding along the rails, steady, yet heavy and deliberate. What's wrong? Chen Sixuan asked as Lin Xian stepped into the carriage. SHH. Lin Xian gestured for silence. Something's approaching, he said in a low voice, motioning for them to stay still. He quickly turned off the lights in the carriage, plunging them into darkness. Squatting down, he pressed his hand against the train floor, activating his mechanical heart ability to merge with the train and assess the situation outside. Chen Sixuan frowned. She walked to the bedside window, carefully lifting the blackout shade just enough to peek outside. Her eyes widened in shock, and she instinctively covered her mouth to stifle a gasp. From her reaction, Kiki's face grew tense as well. Lin Xian, Chen Sixuan whispered, lightly tapping his shoulder in the dark. Lin Xian rose and joined her at the window. Peering through the gap, he froze. What he saw left him utterly stunned. By the dim light of the night, Lin Xian could make out a massive black shadow climbing the iron bridge supports near the rear carriages. Its countless legs clinked rhythmically against the bridge's pillars and tracks, producing a metallic scraping sound. Two long, slender antennae swayed ominously in the dark. That giant insect. Lin Xian's heart sank. How was this thing still following him? From Zhang City's freight hub to Yushan Station, he had driven at least 100 or 200 kilometers during the day, yet this creature had kept up. Was it targeting him specifically? As the shadow drew closer to the rear of the third carriage, Lin Xian's expression hardened. Without hesitation, he activated his mechanical heart, pushing both the Whale 03E and Huanxing 7F locomotives to roar at full power. Run. That was his only thought. This massive centipede was just as terrifying as the pale white giant they had faced earlier. Regular armor would stand no chance against it. While the infinite train was fortified with rolled steel and high-hardness tungsten alloy used in tank armor much stronger than the freezer doors from before, Lin Xian didn't dare gamble. Instead of waiting to be torn apart, it was better to let the train's combined power and weight charge forward. Whoom! The sudden acceleration threw both Chen Sixuan and Kiki off balance. The carriage lights flickered on as the engines roared louder than ever. "Miss Chen, to the driver's cabin!" Lin Xian shouted, drawing his short blade. Chen Sixuan, her heart pounding, steadied herself before rushing unsteadily toward the cabin. Screech! The abrupt motion of the infinite train enraged the crimson centipede. A piercing shriek echoed through the canyon before the train was slammed violently from behind. Bang! The sheer force tilted the entire third carriage, causing the entire train to shudder. Sparks flew from the wheels, filling the air with a screeching wail of grinding metal. "Not good," Lin Xian hissed, tightening his grip on his blade as he dashed toward the third carriage. Meanwhile, Kiki, still tied up, screamed, "Hey, you bastard! Untie me already!" Clack, 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 clack. Following Lin Xian's commands, the blackout shades of all the carriages rolled up simultaneously, flooding the interiors with the eerie night glow. Lin Xian rushed to the third carriage, where he spotted the massive crimson shadow clinging to one side of the train. Clang! 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 The centipede was unnervingly fast, its legs functioning like mechanical claws that allowed it to scale the train with ease. The immense weight caused the roof of the third carriage to creak and groan ominously. Lin Xian's scalp prickled. This thing was far quicker than he had anticipated. It was impossible to shake off. Realizing it might try to reach the engine and derail the train, he decisively lowered the hydraulic tailgate at the rear of the train. But as it descended a third of the way, it jammed. Glancing outside, Lin Xian saw the centipede's segmented body sliding rapidly toward the obstruction. Damn it! Without hesitation, he aimed his wind cannon at the insect's abdomen and fired. Thump! The powerful blast struck directly, emitting a harsh metallic echo. The impact severed one of the creature's hundreds of legs, sending it flying, but caused no significant damage. The attack, however, drew the centipede's attention. It scuttled rapidly onto the roof of the carriage. As the tailgate remained stuck, the centipede curled its tail upward, revealing several massive stingers over a meter long. With a sharp motion, the stingers converged and thrust violently at the steel tailgate. Bang! A tremendous force struck the steel hydraulic ramp, denting it inward with a massive bulge. Lin Xian's heart pounded. This insect's strength was terrifyingly immense. At this rate, the armor would be punctured sooner or later. Thump, thump, thump. The front half of the giant insect had already climbed onto Car 2. Seeing this, Kiki hopped over to Car 2. With a swift kick, she uncovered a small utility knife hidden in the corner of a waterproof bag. So this was how she had secretly cut herself free earlier. Lin Xian glanced at her but had no time to bother with her right now. Kang! Kang! At the same time, a sharp gnawing sound echoed from the roof, producing a horrifying metallic tearing noise. Lin Xian was enraged, fearing the insect would chew through the carriage. Without hesitation, he unleashed a relentless barrage of wind cannon shots at the insect's white, soft underbelly. Puff! 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 The rampaging wind cannon finally showed some effect, shattering several pieces of the insect's soft underbelly. The powerful impact even blasted open a blood-red hole, sending dark green insect blood spurting out. The insect screeched in pain, swiftly retracting its stinger, only to coil it up and aim once more at the already dented hydraulic ramp. Run! Lin Xian's pupils contracted. He knew the ramp wouldn't hold much longer. He turned and shouted at Kiki. Boom! The massive stinger pierced straight through the ramp and into the carriage. At that moment, Kiki was crouching on the ground, anxiously cutting the nylon cable ties around her feet with the small knife. Hearing Lin Xian's shout, She looked up only to see countless shattered steel fragments flying toward her like bullets. She froze, her pupils dilating rapidly. Lin Xian saw that she wasn't dodging and felt a sinking dread. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly appeared in Kiki's field of vision accompanied by a rapidly forming ice wall. Lin Xian had already thrown himself in front of her, swinging his hand. Puff! Puff! The azure ice wall had barely solidified when several black steel shards embedded deeply into it, sending ice shards scattering everywhere. Ah! Kiki let out a soft cry as Lin Xian pulled her into his arms, dodging to the side. Ow! Kiki was pressed down hard. The ropes binding her hands and feet snapped apart. Looking at Lin Xian, who was sprawled over her, she seemed a little flustered. Hey, jerk, are you okay? Lin Xian struggled to his feet, glaring at her with a fierce expression. If you don't help, we're all dead. I'll try. In her panic, Kiki quickly stood up, gritted her teeth, and waved her hands, shouting, hey. However, nothing happened. Lin Xian's eyes widened. He was about to curse when Kiki's face suddenly changed. She pointed toward car 3 and screamed. Look out! The giant insect, having pierced through the ramp, seemed to have found an entry point. After wildly thrashing inside with its stinger, it retracted. Then, with a sudden shift, 2 crimson tentacles reached through the hole in the ramp. At that moment, both Lin Xian and Kiki saw its gaping maw filled with massive pincers. Kang! Kang! The giant insect didn't give Lin Xian even a second to breathe, immediately gnawing at the damaged ramp. If this thing got inside, all 3 of them would be dead today. Without hesitation, Lin Xian got up and fired 2 wind cannons directly at the creature's maw. Boom boom! Blood and flesh erupted. The insect's mouth was blown open, dark green blood spraying everywhere as it let out an ear-splitting screech that made everyone's scalp tingle. Reeling from the pain, the insect's lower half hooked onto a row of iron fence posts beside the railway. With the immense traction force of the accelerating infinite train, it was almost pulled off the carriage. However, the insect's limbs clamped tightly onto car 3, causing the train's speed to plummet sharply. The resulting inertia sent everyone stumbling. Inside the cockpit, Chen Sixuan nearly slammed into the control panel from the sudden deceleration. Looking back, she saw a massive insect clinging desperately to car 3. She immediately shouted at Lin Xian. Hold on. There's a turn ahead. Hearing this, Lin Xian grabbed Kiki by the waist and clung to the door handle of car 3 while activating mechanical heart to slow the train down. If they were going too fast, the train could derail. He had to reduce speed. Clang clang clang. The insect's lower body was getting caught on more and more iron fences. Its clawed feet left deep gouges on the carriage, sparks flying. Meanwhile, the red centipede-like creature screeched incessantly. As the train entered the curve, the centrifugal force flung the insect's lower body into more fence posts. Unable to withstand a pull of the train, it finally let out a shriek and tumbled off the roof of car 3, rolling down the embankment. Clang! Clang! The carriage fell silent once more. That was close. Seeing they had shaken off the insect, Lin Xian finally exhaled. His back was drenched in cold sweat. Are you two okay? Chen Sixuan called out. We're fine. Lin Xian replied. Just as he was about to get off Kiki, a roar suddenly came from the left side of the train. Kiki immediately screamed, Look out! It's coming again. Boom! A red blur slammed into the side of the train with a thunderous impact, tilting the entire carriage. One of the iron wheels lifted off the tracks, letting out a piercing metallic screech. Lin Xian was caught off guard and was flung away by the shock wave, tumbling through the air. Just when he thought car 3 was going to derail and he himself would crash into the carriage, an invisible force suddenly grabbed him mid-air, stopping his fall. Lin Xian was stunned. Turning his head, he saw Kiki sitting up, reaching a hand toward him. Her panicked expression was mixed with a faint white glow in her eyes. Then, the invisible force pulled Car 3 back onto the tracks. Clang! Clang! The wheels locked back in place. Lin Xian was shocked. This was Kiki's ability. She could lift an entire train carriage. Before he could process this, the giant insect climbed up the train again, its massive pincer jaw biting down onto the armored plating. "You effing bastard! You just won't quit!" Lin Xian. Ahead, Chen Sixuan's gaze was sharp as she shouted, "Speed up! There's a 3-kilometer-long tunnel ahead at Biwang Station." Lin Xian's heart pounded. He immediately understood Chen Sixuan's plan and activated mechanical heart to accelerate, lowering the hydraulic ramp even further. "That crazy girl! Who are you calling crazy?" Kiki fumed. Lin Xian grabbed the tow hook and said grimly, "Use your ability to tie that beast up." Kiki hesitated for a moment, but seeing Lin Xian's serious expression, she knew it was life or death. She clenched her fists and said, "Got it." She focused, recalling the sensation from before, and lifted her hands. Whoosh! The invisible force reappeared, yanking the tow hook out of Lin Xian's grip and quickly wrapping around the insect's tail. Screech! The insect struggled fiercely, causing the winch engine to whine and spew black smoke. "Don't let it escape!" Lin Xian shouted. "Lin Xian, watch out!" A dark tunnel loomed ahead, lit by the train's orange headlights. The insect screeched in terror, but it was trapped. Full speed ahead. Lin Xian grabbed Kiki and leaped into Car 2 as the train charged into the tunnel, dragging the monstrous centipede in with it. Boom! The gas turbine engine and electric locomotive roared in unison, accelerating forward. The front carriages surged into the tunnel, while a thunderous crash erupted from the rear. The red centipede-like creature slammed straight into the tunnel wall, causing Car 3 to derail momentarily. The impact sent the other side of the carriage smashing into the tunnel wall, sparks flying, glass shattering. Screech! The giant insect let out an agonized screech, its countless legs thrashing wildly, trying to break free. But the train's momentum had already dragged it in. With the massive weight of the carriage pressing down, its thick, armored exoskeleton scraped against the tunnel walls, producing a horrendous grinding sound. Meanwhile, Kiki, pinned beneath Lin Xian, was clenching her teeth hard, bloodshot veins surfacing in her eyes. She lifted her hands, holding the tow hook tightly around the giant insect's tail, refusing to let it escape. SSSSSHHH. Crack! Crack! The carriage interior reverberated with a series of earth-shattering tremors and gut-wrenching screeches. 3 kilometers inside a tunnel, it felt like an eternity. Then, all of a sudden, the deafening noise ceased. Amidst the lingering metallic groans, Car 3 was finally pulled back onto the tracks. Clang! Clang! The carriage returned to silence once again. Lin Xian gritted his teeth and looked up, only to see the massive pincers still embedded in the armored grating. His heart sank. Quickly turning around, he spotted the metal tow hook dragging the severed rear half of the giant insect along the tracks, leaving a gruesome trail. The tail was already shattered into pieces, blood and flesh strewn about. Is it dead? At that moment, Kiki finally released her hands and jerked her head upward. However, the abrupt movement caused her forehead to slam directly into Lin Xian's chin. Thud! The crisp sound echoed inside the carriage. Ouch! Kiki cried out, clutching her head instinctively with both hands. DN. Lin Xian grimaced in pain, holding his jaw and groaning through gritted teeth. Neither of them had time to confirm whether the giant insect was truly dead, as they both clutched their respective injuries, crying out in pain. That hurt, you jerk. Kiki glared at him angrily. Is your head made of steel? Lin Xian retorted furiously. Despite the brief spat, Lin Xian forced himself to ignore her and stood up, his gaze fixed on the motionless insect corpse outside the carriage. Half his tension eased as he began slowing the train. Cautiously, he picked up a blade and moved toward the rear of the train. Peering out, he saw the insect's body clinging to the side of the train. Its torso had been ground down to a thin layer of flesh and countless legs, with half its corpse severed and hanging from the tow hook. Eek! Lin Xian gently brought the infinite train to a stop. "It's really dead," Kiki exclaimed as Lin Xian stopped the train. Rubbing her head, she eagerly rushed over. But as soon as she saw the shattered insect remains scattered across the ground, her face turned green. Covering her mouth, she dry-heaved. "Ugh, that's disgusting." Lin Xian turned to look at Kiki, his gaze wary. To his surprise, blood began to trickle from Kiki's nostrils. She didn't seem to notice, wiping it away carelessly and tilting her head with a smug expression. "See? I told you keeping me around would be useful. You figured out how to use your ability." "I think so." "When?" "Just now, when I was saving you." Kiki blinked at him. "See? I told you I'm a good person." As she spoke, a fresh stream of blood dripped from her nose, and her face turned unnaturally pale. "But it's weird. Using it makes my head hurt and feel all woozy." Lin Xian realized her energy was completely drained. Growing serious, he looked around for something useful. Finding a towel, he tossed it to Kiki. "Wipe the blood off your face. Is everyone okay?" Chen Sixuan ran over with a look of lingering fear. When she saw the carnage in the third carriage, she immediately covered her mouth, gagging. The insect's corpse exuded a nauseating stench. Even the strongest-willed person couldn't help but frown. Lin Xian glanced at Chen Sixuan. He had to admit, the teacher was much sharper than he'd initially thought. In the face of danger, it was her quick thinking that led to their survival. "We owe you for this," Lin Xian said earnestly. Chen Sixuan avoided his gaze, a little embarrassed. "It wasn't really me." "Of course it was. Without your idea, I wouldn't have known how to handle that monster," Lin Xian said bluntly. "Hey." Kiki placed her hands on her hips, glaring in frustration. "Why isn't anyone thanking me?" As she spoke, another trickle of blood ran down her nose. Lin Xian frowned, noticing her unhealthy pallor. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Before she could finish, Kiki's eyes fluttered shut. Her body swayed, and she collapsed toward Lin Xian. Her face pressed against his chest as she lost consciousness, her hand grabbing his arm weakly. "Don't leave me behind," she murmured faintly before passing out. Lin Xian's expression softened. Looking at the unconscious Kiki, his tense heart finally eased a little. Seems like she knows her situation. When it matters, she can be reliable. With this thought, Lin Xian let go of some of his suspicions toward her. He exchanged a glance with Chen Sixuan. "Watch over her. I'm going to check the situation. If it's safe, we'll stay here until dawn." "Okay." Chen Sixuan nodded uneasily, her gaze flicking between the wreckage of the third carriage and the dark wilderness outside. Lin Xian grabbed a flashlight from the toolbox in the carriage, jumping off the train through the rear ramp. Frowning at the insect's shattered remains, he inspected the scene closely. He soon returned, hauling out a small winch. Using it, he pried the insect's massive pincers out of the armored grating. The remaining torso fell from the side of the train. Lin Xian then moved to the back, unhooked the severed tail, and reeled the hook back onto the train. "This'll need some fixing." Lin Xian gazed at the aftermath in the third carriage, his expression heavy. As that brat said, this train needs weapons and a defense system. Speed alone isn't enough. If it hadn't been for Chen Sixuan's quick thinking, Lin Xian truly wouldn't have known how to handle tonight's chaos. His wind cannon could rival the power of firearms at close range, but its effectiveness dropped drastically at a distance. Against thick-skinned monsters like the pale giant or tonight's red insect, conventional weapons were practically useless. Just as Lin Xian finished clearing the wreckage and prepared to head back to the train, he suddenly felt a tremor beneath his feet, as if something was stirring underground. In an instant, a faint rustling reached his ears. Flashlight in hand, he aimed it toward the massive insect corpse beside the train. Black smoke was pouring out of it, but instead of dissipating into the air, the smoke seemed to be drawn underground by some mysterious force. Lin Xian frowned and stepped forward cautiously. The rustling grew louder, turning into what sounded like the cries and wails of countless people, sending chills down his spine. What the hell is that? Startled, Lin Xian jumped back several steps, distancing himself from the black smoke. As he retreated, the terrifying wails faded back into a faint rustle. Within seconds, the black smoke completely disappeared, leaving only the rotting corpse of the insect, its stench hanging in the air. Did I imagine that? Lin Xian stared in shock. When he had been near the black smoke, he was certain he'd heard the cries of humans, as though the victims swallowed by the creature were screaming in unison. It was disturbingly eerie. Returning to the train, Lin Xian attempted to raise the rear ramp. Though the train's body was damaged in several places, the hydraulic lift for the ramp was thankfully still functional. Activating his mechanical heart, Lin Xian raised the ramp, then looked over the mess in the third carriage. Tools were scattered everywhere, including the welder, small winch, and even his motorcycle. These items were essential. Repairing them would be difficult and time-consuming if they were damaged. Lin Xian's mechanical repair and manufacturing abilities were intertwined, requiring both materials and significant time investment. After the intense battle, he was utterly drained. Thankfully, this remote wilderness hadn't attracted a zombie horde despite all the commotion, allowing him a moment's respite. He glanced at the time, 9:15 p.m. The battle and escape from the giant insect had lasted over 2 hours. How is everything? Chen Sixuan rose as Lin Xian closed the door behind him. For now, we're safe. Lin Xian grabbed a bottle of water from the storage rack and downed a third of it in one go. As his gaze swept across the carriage, he noticed the young girl had fallen asleep on the couch, supported by Chen Sixuan. It was clear that while her newly awakened ability was powerful, it also drained her energy at an alarming rate. Lin Xian's expression turned complicated. Though he had just saved her life and they had fought side by side, he couldn't help but be wary of the girl's cunning nature. Now that she had awakened an ability, Lin Xian wasn't confident he could best her in a confrontation. The thought troubled him. Are you injured? Chen Sixuan asked, noticing the blood on Lin Xian's hands and face. Just scratches. Lin Xian sighed, then turned to Chen Sixuan. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Tomorrow, depending on the situation, I plan to stop at Biwang Station to rest. Chen Sixuan nodded. Biwang Town is small. It shouldn't be too complicated there. After Biwang, the next major city is Yobei City. That's where we'll properly enter the planetary orbital rail. The conditions. She hesitated. Initially, she'd intended to say the conditions might improve, but now she wasn't so sure. After all, they'd been lucky not to encounter rubble or broken tracks so far. Who knew if the road ahead would be better or worse? In the dark of night, the infinite train rested silently on the tracks in the valley, like a mechanical behemoth. Inside the third carriage, Lin Xian's eyes glowed faintly as he activated his mechanical repair skill, focusing on the rear ramp and side armor. Meanwhile, Chen Sixuan busied herself disinfecting the wounds on Lin Xian's hands and face using a first aid kit they had scavenged from the Oasis convoy. Lin Xian suddenly paused, his pupils filled with shock as he stared at the light screen in front of him. His attributes and skill proficiencies had made a significant leap. Current mechanical heart level, LV.1, 310/500. Note, Leveling up the mechanical heart grants special skill rewards. At LV.3, LV.6, and LV.9, it unlocks a mysterious awakening. Basic attributes. Strength, LV.1, 47/50ths. Speed, LV.1, 16/50ths. Defense, LV.0, 28/30ths. Current basic skills. Mechanical Devour, LV.2, 8/500. Mechanical Manufacturing, LV.1, 112/300. Mechanical Scan, Passive. Mechanical Repair, Passive. Mechanical Operation, Passive. Special Skills. Wind Cannon, LV.1, 66/100. Ice Shield, LV.1, 18/100. How did my attributes increase without devouring machinery? Lin Xian muttered, perplexed. After the battle, his wind cannon had jumped from 25 to 66 proficiency, while Ice Shield, which had previously gained 5 points after his fight with Lu Wei, had now increased by 12. While it made sense that fighting stronger enemies yielded more gains, the unexpected rise in his basic attributes puzzled him. Previously, attribute increases were rewards gained exclusively through Mechanical Devour. Yet tonight, his strength had risen by 14 points, speed by 7 points, and defense by 8 points, a gain equivalent to devouring 4 large freezers. What's going on? Both surprised and delighted, Lin Xian mulled over this anomaly. I've killed so many zombies before, but they've never increased my attributes. He sank into deep thought. Could it be that killing these eerie entities grants ability enhancements? This seemed like the most plausible explanation. He recalled the black centipede on Grand Palais, the white humanoid giant in the furniture store, and now the massive red insect. He hadn't been the one to kill the first two but had finally dealt the killing blow tonight. Letting out a sigh, Lin Xian decided not to overthink it. Gains were better than nothing. From his current attributes, both strength and defense were close to leveling up, a concrete improvement that significantly boosted his combat prowess. Far away, hundreds of kilometers from the valley, the city of John was plunged into polar night. In the darkness, the city's streets and corners teemed with zombies and eerie entities. The radio waves had gone silent. High above, within the enormous cloud cover, a colossal floating corpse trembled. The clouds dispersed, revealing its massive form, like a mountain blotting out the stars. Suddenly, the zombies throughout the city grew agitated, and countless hidden creatures began howling. Black blood mist was forcibly drawn from their bodies, coalescing under a strange gravitational pull. As if the heavens had flipped, the zombies collapsed en masse, falling like grain in a harvested field. A suffocating deathly aura enveloped the entire city. Then, the continent-sized floating corpse slowly turned eastward and began to move. After a night of repairs, Lin Xian had restored most of the damage to the third carriage. He patched the broken sections with steel plates, rendering the carriage functional once more. Exhaustion had taken its toll, and when he finally opened his eyes again, it was to Chen Sixuan calling him awake. Lin Xian, Lin Xian. Opening his eyes, he saw Chen Sixuan's bright, excited gaze. It's daylight, she exclaimed, grabbing his hand and pointing to his watch. Look. Lin Xian focused his gaze, feeling the sunlight streaming through the window. His watch read 16:26, an hour and a half earlier than expected. His eyes widened, and the grogginess vanished instantly. How far did we travel last night? He asked Chen Sixuan. Over 400 kilometers. If the odometer is accurate, we're only about 50 kilometers from Buwang Town. Lin Xian turned toward the nearby couch and noticed Kiki, already awake, sitting cross-legged with a cheerful grin. She waved at him. You're better now? Lin Xian asked. Yep. After a good night's sleep, I feel great. Kiki beamed, full of energy. Lin Xian frowned and muttered, "I think I forgot to tie you up." Kiki's face instantly darkened, and she tensed up. "Hey, I saved your life yesterday. You're still thinking of tying me up?" "No need to tie you up," Lin Xian replied seriously. "Considering your performance last night, I'll let the food theft slide. But if you don't answer my questions honestly, I'll still throw you off the train." Kiki's expression grew uneasy. She hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. What questions?" "You said your father is the owner of Linglong Corporation and a secondary investor in the Dawn Project. Is that true?" Kiki tilted her head, confused. "Didn't you say you weren't interested in that?" "Answer me," Lin Xian demanded sharply. His stern demeanor made it clear he wasn't in the mood for games. Kiki's personality was unpredictable, and her newfound ability made her a potential threat. If Lin Xian didn't set boundaries now, she'd be impossible to manage. Even Chen Sixuan, standing nearby, felt a pang of nervousness. She quietly reflected that she hadn't realized Lin Xian possessed such decisiveness and intensity. In moments like this, he seemed more like a commanding leader than her peer. "It's true," Kiki snapped, her tone annoyed. She thought to herself, "This guy is insufferable. Where were you heading in the helicopter?" "I don't really know," Kiki replied with a shrug. "I just know it was toward Mount Dalua." Lin Xian studied her closely. Her tone didn't seem deceptive, so he pressed on. "Do you know why the helicopter crashed?" At this, Kiki's face paled slightly. She shook her head. "I don't remember much. It lost control all of a sudden, and there seemed to be something in the sky." Lin Xian's frown deepened. As he suspected, the massive cloud formation over John City harbored something truly terrifying. That oppressive presence was even more unsettling than the onset of the polar night. "All right, one last question." Lin Xian exhaled, fixing Kiki with a scrutinizing gaze. "You're young, but you seem highly knowledgeable about advanced technology. Why is that?" Kiki, who had been tense, relaxed slightly at the question. Her eyes lit up, and she smirked with confidence. "You underestimate me. I'm well versed in cutting-edge information systems. There's nowhere online I can't access. Before all this, I could even get my hands on the specs for the Starfleet's most advanced heavy integrated armor. Ever heard of the multi-aperture phased array radar? Or the experimental I-17 multi-leaf plasma cannon? Those are fun toys, but I know much more," she continued, now gesturing toward the train with enthusiasm. "Take your 2028 Model Whale 03E heavy gas turbine locomotive. It's been retired for nearly a decade and struggles with the turbulence and high salinity windstorms of transoceanic railways. You've only driven it 1,000 kilometers, and you're far from the oceanic route. But food, water, air, information, defense, and medical supplies? Aside from the energy shortage, you're basically starting from scratch. Am I wrong?" Chen Sixuan looked at Kiki in sheer disbelief. It was hard to imagine that this young girl could possess such extensive knowledge.